Like every other customer, he stood at the checkout counter. But there was something unique about the way he, almost reverently, he held that old, faded receipt as though it were a letter from the past. The young cashier hardly paid him any attention. Initially engrossed in the cadence of beeping scanners and routine transactions, everything ceased when he uttered the words, "3 years ago you wrote this," and handed her the paper. She noticed her own handwriting at the bottom, which read, "Thank you for your kindness." Everything came flooding back. That exhausting shift, the stranger who seemed to be carrying the weight of the world, and the insignificant gesture she made. She had no idea that her words would stick with him, encouraging him during difficult times and serving as a constant reminder that there was still good in the world. After years of silence, he finally came back to express that her generosity mattered, not to complain or buy anything. This moment was a silent explosion of humanity in a world that frequently moves too quickly to notice it. It serves as a reminder that even the smallest gesture, like smiling, saying thank you, or writing a handwritten note, can have a lasting impact on someone. Everybody has a story to tell, and occasionally we are fortunate enough to be included without even realizing it. Back at the dealership, the sun danced off the curves of immaculate machines as it passed through the enormous glass facade of the showroom. Each Lamborghini, Aston Martin, and Porsche shines like a gem in a temple constructed for the wealthy. The ambiance had returned to its typical cadence of mellow music, opulent murmurs, and the subtle clinking of espresso cups. However, there was a dull hum of 4 synchronized footsteps resonating off polished marble that signaled the beginning of something new. Once more, the doors hewed open. Not in a panic, not with force, but with purposeful confidence, the kind that draws attention before anything is said. For men with broad shoulders and clean cuts entered, their eyes sweeping the area with serene accuracy as if they had cleared buildings much more hostile than this. They didn't need to identify themselves because it was evident in their posture, their effortless discipline, and the silent command they carried about them like gravity. This wasn't a casual visit. Were Navy SEALs, and they were elite among elite. Chief Petty Officer Cole Reaper Maddox, a legendary figure in the special warfare community, renowned for his unwavering loyalty as well as his battlefield prowess, stood at their core. He was accompanied by Sniper Lieutenant Theo Alvarez, who was known for his cold focus, Petty Officer James Hawk Harper, the unit's fastest breacher and Marcus Kane's closest friend since Bud S., and Senior Chief Nate Steele Bradford, whose size alone seemed to reverberate. They appeared to be well-built, dignified men dressed in civilian attire. For those who recognized them as human weapons, they bore silent tales of raids, rescues, and sacrifices that few could fathom. The 2 guards who had just ejected Marcus tensed up as they entered. With anxious eyes, the older one adjusted his belt. Before he could say anything, Cole moved forward and locked eyes with the younger. "1. We're here to see a car," he said. His voice was smooth, but there was no mistaking the edge beneath a trauer, sharpened over years of giving commands that could mean the difference between life and death. However, he began by adding, "Someone here disrespected a Marine. We don't tolerate that." Silence swept through the showroom like wildfire. The receptionist froze her fingers. Salespeople of the mid-type looked at each other anxiously. Consumers started to notice the tension change from mild to intense. Trying to hide his bewilderment with a plastic smile, the manager, a 50-something man with a Rolex that gleamed as loudly as his voice usually did, hurried out of his glass office. He began, "Gentlemen, how can we help?" But Nate interrupted him with a glare that made him stop. "A man entered here 20 minutes ago," Theo said as he moved forward. "Sergeant Marcus Kane, staff. He has more medals than there are cars in this showroom." He was made fun of because he was black and wore boots rather than loafers. The manager made a mistake. "There had to be a miscommunication," Hawk said. "No," in a firm yet low voice. "A decision was made. You evaluated a hero based solely on his attire. There is no miscommunication there. That is an error." Cole moved closer. Just his presence was sufficient to cause the guard to shrink back. "You made an external judgment. You failed to seek out the man who has seen more, accomplished more." and given up more than the majority of those present will ever do. He paused to allow the reality to sink in. Our brother is that man. The manager's face shattered. I was unaware at the time that sweat was collecting close to his collar.
Recognize.
Now Nate growled. You have no say in who appears wealthy or honorable, and you have no say in maintaining dignity. A woman by the convertible put down her coffee and started silently filming. A younger client gave a solemn nod. Another voice murmured that was the guy they kicked out. The space was changing. In real time, the story was writing itself. Now in a panic, the manager attempted to get better. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. I will speak with the security team right away. I would like to extend an invitation to your friend to attend a VIP event on the house. Hawk moved forward and said, I don't want your sympathy. He desired a car and manly treatment. The doors suddenly opened once more. The entire building now knew that Marcus Kane had every right to be there when he returned, not to prove anything, or play the hero. He wasn't by himself. Where most of these city dwellers had only seen headlines, he stood next to men who had shed blood, sweat, and silence. Men who were more concerned with their character than their race, wealth, or attire. Cole glanced at Marcus and nodded. No words are required. The nod that conveys the message, we've got you. And Marcus walked right past the manager, the guards, the shocked employees, and paused in front of the exact sports couple he had imagined black, and black with that same quiet confidence. It's not to confront, but to assert what he had come for. He reached out and placed his hand on the hood, and everyone in the room watched. Unflinching and unrepentant, he had already earned his spot, so he didn't need their approval. And as his brothers stood by him, they served as a living example that respect is earned via sacrifice rather than by gatekeepers. The dealership came to an unavoidable realization. Honor doesn't always enter in a clean coat, and power doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it comes in boots with unspeakable scars and a silent strength that roars louder than words. There was something unusual about the silence that pervaded the showroom. When people realize they've seen something greater than a confrontation, something heavier than discomfort, something genuine, the silence that follows a revelation thickens the air. Marcus Kane stood with his hand resting on the sleek hood of the jet-black coupe, a man regaining his dignity via presence rather than anger. His gaze was fixed on the dream he had carried through the desert heat. Foreign gunfire and sleepless nights in the name of a nation that both admired and questioned him, rather than the crowd, the guards, or the manager now struggling behind him. His brothers, those 4 SEALs, who stood close by with the composure of men who had entered death and returned stronger, established a circle of quiet rage without yelling or threatening anything, but instead sending a message that was more powerful than any outburst. We defend our own, now red-faced and obviously perspiring under his pricey suit. The manager stammered out a feeble apology that attempted to balance self-preservation with customer service, saying things like, we value veterans, and this was a rare oversight. But in the silence that followed, the hollowness of his words clattered loudly. Since everyone in that room now realized what they had seen wasn't unusual at all, nobody nodded or applauded, just infrequently confronted a younger salesman, who had been silent while others looked on passively, came forward, blushing with embarrassment. His voice was shaky but sincere. Sir. Marcus finally looked up, not in rage but with the patient gaze of a man who had seen worse and had chosen mercy over malice. I didn't come here for an apology, he said simply. I came for a car. You deserve better than what you got today, he said. Those 7 words struck like thunder, reverberating deeply and loudly throughout the dealership. While feigning to peruse a convertible, one of the older customers overheard the entire exchange and abruptly started clapping. It was slow, hesitant, almost awkward, but sincere. Then someone else joined in, and then someone else, till the silent showroom erupted in cheers that weren't planned by PR, but rather came from the truth. There was no standing ovation. There was no social media. At that moment, it was something more ancient and holy. Restored respect, the 2 guards, who appeared smaller now than when they were posing at the entrance, moved aside in silence. One even gave Marcus a nod, but it was a silent admission rather than a way to absolve himself. We were mistaken." The manager was courteously ignored while still speaking. No title or pay could restore the damaged credibility in the room because the dealership's power structure had changed.
Oh.
"You still want it?" asked Cole Maddox, who moved forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with Marcus. Marcus grinned, but it wasn't a show. It was the kind of smile that appears when you've waited, fought, realized your value, and seen others recognize it at last. "Yeah," he replied, "I still desire it." Within minutes, the same young salesman who had stepped up as they passed, the crowd towards the finance office was handling the paperwork. Not the guards or the agitated manager, and people moved instinctively to the side, not out of fear but out of respect. "That man is a true hero," one mother even whispered to her teenage son. Marcus didn't stop even after hearing it. He needed closure more than praise. Hawk could have gone tactical on him after bumping into his shoulder while they were walking. He smiled as he teased, "Clear the area of any breaches." Marcus laughed, saying that sometimes the loudest thing you can do is to remain silent. He wasn't just a Marine. He served as a mirror reflecting both the greatest and worst aspects of America in a single afternoon. The applause subsided, but its impact persisted in how people now perceive him. Not with uncertainty or contempt, but with acknowledgement. Not because he was not wearing a uniform, but rather because he never removed his dignity. And the dealership saw more than just a sale as he slid into the driver's seat at those black and black machine doors with the low engine ready. Marcus heard the engine purr beneath him. Kane sat down in the driver's seat of the black and black coupe. The exact representation of a reward he had previously only seen on screen, like a living thing, smooth and fierce. Thoughts in the late-night barracks about a dream that had followed? Him through radioactive flares across continents and through the oppressive quiet of the night, when all he had left to cling to was fire. Discipline and faith, the scent of fresh starts filled the interior. Carbon fiber, leather, and earned luxury, and the weight of the entire afternoon settled as a badge rather than a burden as he gripped the steering wheel. He could see the employees of the dealership gradually going back to their jobs behind the tinted glass. Consumers continued to whisper, some grinning, some trembling. Everything changed, but Marcus didn't require their praise. He had the closure he required. His brother was in a loose formation outside, like sentinels occupying space while one of their own declared victory without resorting to violence. This was instinctive rather than habitual. Cole nodded subtly. Theo gave a gradual thumbs up. Hawk raised his phone to time the moment rather than record it because he knew this was more than a purchase, and Nate crossed his arms with a contented smile. The mission was accomplished. Marcus glanced at them after rolling down the window. Not to express gratitude, but to affirm that we are never alone. When two Hawks called out, they already knew the response. "Moving forward," Marcus said in a steady voice. "Forward at all times," he then tapped the ignition, causing the engine to come to life like a beast that eventually unchained and began to slowly pull away, rolling out with a sense of calm that only comes from weathering storms, without speeding or revving hours later. Dealership behind him appeared smaller and less significant as it faded into the rearview mirror. A structure that was now characterized by a lesson that permeated every inch of its marble corridors rather than by its chrome or price tags. Never judge a man by his appearance. Instead, consider his life experiences. Additionally, sunlight caught the car's deep black curves like armor as Marcus turned onto the boulevard. He was a living correction, a silent force that redrawn the boundaries of who belonged where, not just a Marine who purchased a car. He simply drove past people, who double-took past streets he used to patrol in uniform without making a scene or blasting music. He carried more than horsepower as he blended into the city's pulse, but before that, a society too frequently forgot its heroes when they weren't honored. He carried evidence and a purpose for his presence. The power had left the showroom, and was moving in a man in a moment that would never make news but would reverberate in all subsequent tales. And somewhere deep within that engine's rumble beneath the leather and steel and speed rode a silent, indisputable truth. You can take away the man's uniform, but you can never take away the warrior's honor.